Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be talking about my PhD journey. It's something I've spoken about quite vaguely throughout different videos on my channel, but today I'm going to walk you through my journey with my PhD, what I'm studying, and what I hope to accomplish at the end of it as well. So stay tuned if you want to learn more, and also I'm going to be dropping some tips in case you want to do a PhD. Yeah, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but in case you do, I'll be dropping some tips because I think that my route was a little bit unconventional in terms of I've really changed from my bachelor's to my PhD now, but stay tuned just to learn a little bit more about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So my PhD is looking at the appearance of ADHD and autism in Afro-Caribbeans. So the overarching kind of theme here is racial equity and neurodiversity, but I thought for the purposes of this research being very valuable, that it would be very important to get specific, and along the journey you get even more specific, and as someone who has personal experiences of having friends present with ADHD and autism, and myself getting a late diagnosis in ADHD, I felt that it was really, really important to understand why is it that there is this disparity in getting a diagnosis as an Afro-Caribbean individual or a person of Afro-Caribbean descent. And one of the factors that I was looking at is that because of our cultures and how we grow up embedded in such rich backgrounds, for example, especially if you've got parents who are migrants, who've come from another country, and there's certain traditions and customs, it means that our masking looks a bit different. And oftentimes with masking, we have our cultural undertones as well. So if you don't know and you're new here, I'm half Nigerian, half Grenadian, and the Nigerian culture in my house is very, very strong, very, very rife, which means that maybe my culture may have impacted the way that I would present symptoms. And additionally, we also have race as well. We know that medically, throughout different walks of medicine, there is an unconscious, whether we want to call it unconscious or conscious, bias towards Black people and the perception of pain, illness, and symptoms as well. So it was really, really important for me to get really kind of solid with what I was looking at and why. And I think for me, the importance of doing this PhD was with the recommendation to be able to support psychologists and psychiatrists with the understanding that we know these conditions look different gender to gender. We've seen the data on the fact that boys are more likely to get a diagnosis as opposed to females, again with the consideration of how females mask these conditions, but I don't think we've got the cultural piece in there just yet. So it's been really exciting. I'm really motivated to really be honest and frank with what the research shows me, and hopes that it will change things in the future. So that's a quick synopsis on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So if we're wondering where my PhD sits in terms of topics, I sit specifically in the anthropology department, and that's just because of my journey into my PhD. I did my master's in psychiatric and psychological anthropology, and I hope that the outcome of my PhD right now will be the same. So it's underpinned by anthropology, but I'm hoping that it will be a psychological and psychiatric anthropological doctorate that I complete with. So that is the department I sit in. The journey I took into my PhD was a little bit like, girl, how did you get here? But let me walk you through it. So I'm going to quickly tell you about my academic journey and how I've basically got to this point as well. So if you're from the UK, you know we did our GCSEs. I went on to do a BTEC in sports and exercise science with a coaching diploma as well, which is equivalent to 4 A-levels. I got distinction stars across all of them. And I was pretty set that I was going to do sports and exercise science all the way through. As in, when I applied on UCAS, I applied to the University of Bath, and I applied for the integrated masters in sports and exercise science. That's a 4-year course, would have come out with my masters. However, at the time, as you know, I was an elite athlete in weightlifting, and an offer for me to essentially train full-time as a funded athlete at Loughborough College was an option. And with someone who actually didn't really want to go uni, I actually didn't really want to go. I just knew that, okay, I've done sports science before, I guess I can do it again. I don't have any other plans. Let's just go to uni kind of vibes. I went with the offer and did my sports and exercise science degree, first year in Loughborough College, and came back to UEL in London. So I moved back home after a year, and I got my bachelor's in sports and exercise science. Nothing fancy, quite simple. Finished uni, had a year out, worked for a bit, and then realized I wanted to do teaching. So I went back to uni and did my PGCE in biology, secondary science and college science, whatever. So I can teach biology at A levels and GCSE level, and all 3 sciences at Key Stage 3. Did that, went into teaching BTEC, was head of my BTEC department, and was like, do you know what? I've not done anything to upskill myself, but I knew that I was really passionate about psychology, and I was looking at different courses I could get into in regards to not necessarily like solely psychology and psychiatry, but what is like an overarching for human behavior. And I remember at the time there was 2 shows that I was watching which I was just like, oh my gosh. I was watching Ball and Bones. Ball is I think his was like, it's all like fiction, by the way, it's not like real. So Ball was like psychology, and Bones is a forensic anthropologist. So I started looking into anthropology, and then I found this course that had psychiatric and psychological anthropology, and I was like, oh my gosh, all 3 subjects that I'm insanely interested in one course. Fantastic. So I did that, and was it an experience? Transitioning from a bachelor's in a subject like sports science, which has nothing to do with anthropology, was really hard. And not hard in the sense of, oh my gosh, like I don't get it. Hard in the sense that once you go to master's level, the assumption is that you have all the basis that you would have got at bachelor's levels, because generally the people that won my master's course had done anthropology or sociology or something in that field, or social science in that field, and had the underpinning theories and foundations. So that's what made it really, really difficult. And again, I did mine full-time alongside working full-time. So master's is 1 year, and I was working full-time as well. So I was literally going to lectures and seminars when I could on my break and in my free periods. And that for me was a huge, because it wasn't easy. My writing style, I've always struggled with my writing style. Like, I'm great at English, but I kind of write how I speak sometimes, and I don't proofread. Again, being a little bit spicy in the brain, it appears in different ways. So I got hit really hard with just kind of strong and impolite criticism about my writing style, and to the point where it broke me down, like quite literally. And I didn't know how to move forward, but thankfully I had an amazing tutor who is now my supervisor, who stepped in to kind of support me in the ways in which I could write, the ways in which I could catch up with everyone, and kind of help me catch up and get that underpinning of anthropology and the knowledge that would help me to complete my master's. With your master's, you've got some core modules and then your optional modules. And I remember picking optional modules that I was really interested in, stepping out of my comfort zone. The course that I was on was really eye-opening to the fact that we only know like so much about things, and we were looking at different cultures, we were looking at different environments, different contexts, different truths. And I think sometimes when you've grown up in one place, as I've only ever lived in London, I'm well traveled by virtue of my sport, but in terms of understanding that people live, think differently to you, believe differently to you, and they have a different truth in their environment, was one of the best things that I think could happen to me in terms of understanding that, wow, we're only at the tip of the iceberg with this world, especially if we don't go and immerse ourselves in other people's cultures. So I did my master's, completed it. It was a ride, but then I took another year out. These not back-to-back things. Took another year out, and I just had to think about, okay, what is it that I want to do? And I was like, I know that I want to do my PhD. I remember sitting down and then reaching out to my tutor, who has now become my supervisor, and saying, I want to do my PhD. However, I will either do it in sports. It's easy for me. I can do sport. Or I will do it on a matter that is important. And I said, that is somewhere in the psychological and psychiatric field. Cool. And we spoke about it. We quickly realized that the latter, so something in the psychological and psychiatric field, would be my best use of time, because it's not just about getting a doctorate, it's actually adding value to the field of research. And that's how I got to my research question and my course. I'm a year and a half in, and I resumed January this year because I took a 3-month break. One of the things with PhDs that we do need to recognize is that you are either a funded PhD candidate or you're unfunded. I'm unfunded based on the fact that, one, when I applied, the funding window was closed, and then when I did apply my first year, my funding application was rejected because the field is so competitive, and it felt that my research just wasn't funding worthy, I guess. So yeah, I'm unfunded, which comes with its drawbacks because I work as well. So I work and I do my PhD full time. And if you know anything about PhDs are a full-time endeavor. So there's 2 full-time things going on in my life. And it makes it really, really hard because you want to be able to invest all of your time, all of your being into doing your PhD, into your reading, into your research, into speaking to different people, learning from different people, and just upskilling. And in this time, some people produce publications, some people produce mini articles, all those sorts of stuff. But as an unfunded candidate, it's like, I don't really have that capacity. I do have to work. And unfortunately, I'm just not privileged enough to have like some sort of other resource that would allow me to just do this full time with no funding. So that's one of the drawbacks. But outside of that, it's actually a really amazing journey that I'm enjoying. And it's really challenging and pushing me, to be quite frank. It's pushed my thoughts and my feelings about things, how I view things, my perception of things. And one of the things about the PhD that I think that PhD people don't always talk about is that it's a constantly evolving process. So you start in one place and it's like you get thrown here. You get thrown everywhere. And that, if you are not open-minded, and especially I'm someone that's quite like rigid in terms of I like this, I like structure. The PhD is not like that. It is not like your bachelor's where there was a very defined curriculum. It's not like your master's where there was a defined curriculum with some sort of flexibility. This is like almost like throwing paint on a wall and trying to see the beauty and the art that comes out of it. That is what your PhD is. And for me, the first couple of months, I really struggled with that. I've now kind of created an optimized structure for me to help me get through my PhD. But yeah, it's a constantly evolving place. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate is that I have a supervisor who's able to coach me through the fact that things will change, like things will flow, and you've got to flow with it. As it goes for me, I think right now, I should say in conclusion, right now, my objectives is to finish my PhD, of course. And I think that's the bit where you're just kind of like, all this end. Yeah, eventually it will. To finish my PhD and to go on to make an impact in the area in which I serve, in the community in which I serve and come from. And I think my PhD now and my master's especially helped me in my consultancy work that I do, working with different organizations across the DEI space, so diversity, equity, inclusion. It's really, really helped in that. And I think the 2 going together is my next steps. So I'm going to complete this PhD. I'm going to keep pushing, keep trudging, keep doing the work. And then alongside that, also be able to share this knowledge in different ways, whether that's with schools, whether that is with organizations and businesses, whether that's with universities, like just continue to go ahead and share the importance of racial equity, the importance of inclusion, the importance of addressing our unconscious biases, the importance of just being better humans that understand that people are different. So that is my next step. So I'm going to be documenting this journey a little bit more. I've given you an intro now. So anything that comes from this will now know that, okay, for the PhD. So I'm going to add this to the playlist, which will now become PhD Diaries. Welcome. And I will walk you through this journey of being what feels like, I think, almost a second year student. Yeah, I'm a second year student who is trudging along to complete this and take you through the ups, the downs, and just what this journey looks like from a realistic perspective of someone who is working and someone who is doing a PhD. which I think people are not talking about enough. I've not seen many examples where people are talking about the harsh realities of like having to do life and do your PhD at the same time. So I'm hoping that I can bring that balance. I hope that if you've enjoyed this video, obviously, like, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends to tell a friend. Tell all your friends to tell their friends. And then come back here and subscribe. And if you're feeling real juicy, hit that bell so you get a notification each time I upload a video. Again, if you made it to the end, put a brown heart in the comments. I love you all. Thank you so much for riding this one out. Even with all the research jargon that is here, love you guys down. So have a lovely and blessed week wherever you are. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.